viable community. I mean, there's a couple things that I feel like we haven't really talked about yet, which are safety, like public safety, diversity, and accessibility. And I kind of feel like they belong in here somewhere. I saw like ADA in a previous one, and I just want to sort of understand and make sure that we kind of call them out specifically somewhere. Because those are all things that we've talked about specifically in our mission and vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of just understanding that aspect of it.
I believe at the last session, I think it was first articulated by Councilmember Rice and then by another member as well, but there seemed to be some desire to have some language pertaining to public safety in this document.
Yeah, so there is a new goal that wasn't discussed at the last meeting from that comment, which we'll get to, I believe, next, or do I have one more? Two more goals.
Section.
Yeah, the last section,
You
section
want to
7.
withhold your comments then till that time, Ms. Dillon? We can.
Yeah, I fully expect there'll be more to add to that section, because right now that is just basically what myself and Police Chief Radzik have put together.
Right. I mean, because it does feel like in this one, there's a lot of very specific focus on the rec center and things like that. And I just want to make sure that the category doesn't become the rec center of, there's some things about, promoting it and doing things with it. And I just want to make sure that it's really outward facing. If we're going to talk about our assets, we're talking about all of our assets, like all of our parks, all of our amenities, things like that too. So I guess just sort of understanding that aspect of it.
Sure, I mean, I think if you look at Goal 1, there's a pretty comprehensive list that identifies all area parks, neighborhoods, corridor planning, specific strategies for Mill Pond Park, specific strategies for park-to-park connectivity, and then other aspects of these goals are around housing or general economic development activities. So there's more. I mean, there's a parks meeting tomorrow night. I'd be happy to show them a draft of this as well and just gather any input.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're incorporating the best of all of our master plans and things like, we talk about, we've got the non-motorized, we've got a parks one, we've got our regular master plan, we've got all these different plans that they all have representation in this document. So that we kind of figure that part out. That was just my comments.
Very good.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gearbaugh, any questions, comments regarding this category?
The only thing for me is it's goal number 2 when we're talking about, providing for more housing, different ideas and development and such as that, is prioritizing within that and trying to understand, I don't want to necessarily reinvent the entire city in 1 year, whereas I think we've got priorities of areas downtown or adjacent where, and I don't know how we can categorize that within it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's very broad and could be very impactful. And I know we're going to be talking about some of that actually even in the next couple meetings, but for planning, it's just trying to figure out, we have some key areas where I think we need to focus on versus reinventing the wheel. And maybe that could be addressed a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think I'll ultimately defer to Director Harrington, but I think we could easily make an action item implementation of the housing assessment research that's currently being done for us now by Carlisle Wortman. That's the obvious starting point. And to your point, Councilmember Gearbaugh, I think some of this language is quite broad and it would be helpful for staff to look at again to turn into action items instead of
So it's a little
vision statements. Yeah,
especially like some of the things with the developments of community aspects or whatever. If we get a developer coming forward, whatever, how to address that immediately, because there may be an issue that we may not agree with what they're proposing and we need to talk about how to do it differently.
Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rice?
So I think to part of Mayor Pro Tem Dillon's point is let's make sure that as we're going through this and we're sort of identifying who owners are and identifying who can help with these tasks, that we have our commissions involved as much as possible. Like, we have specific goals for the Parks Commission that we've prioritized out of the 5-year Parks Master Plan. So we just want to make sure that we're not, overlapping in efforts, that they're really cohesive. And that also goes with any of the other outside entities that we're working with, so like Saline Main Street, making sure that we're identifying in here where we could help them, where they could help us, where we could work collaboratively. I think this is a big section for those collaborations. So I would like to make sure that we think strategically as we're sort of planning those out.
Thank you.
That was it.
Councilmember Harmount?
Just to add on to that, I think it would maybe be a good idea to have when we roll this out, to have all of the commission heads to be involved in making sure that that is integrated into their strategies and that we're not working against, the strategy in the commissions.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay. All right. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to transition to the subsequent goal category?
Yes. So the next category is purposeful planning and smart growth. Looking here at cross-departmental collaboration on redevelopment opportunities. So really honing in on our development process. We've already started down that path by updating our engineering standards, but identifying greater opportunities for new processes to be put in place. Curating the identity of the community with stakeholders at large. Again, that revolves a bit more around relationship building with other entities. And then proactively evaluating, planning, and steering certain development opportunities, as well as, looking at sensical development standards that align with our existing plans and aligning our property maintenance standards with our overall goals of blight elimination.
Very good. Councilmember Lesh?
Nothing this time.
Mr. Seal?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't know where we'd fit it in, but it seems to me like with purposeful planning, we should make an attempt to reach outside our own boundaries too, to work with the state and county governments to ensure that plans that occur don't necessarily impinge on us, either for roadways or we have 2 sewer plants plopped right on our western border from one of our adjacent townships. I'm wondering if some future planning with them might kind of help us integrate more successfully things like traffic flows, smells, all the above. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through how we turn that into a specific action item or what the pieces of that are. I don't disagree with you. I don't know.
I mean, it's part of Goal 3.
Anyone have any ideas?
We're talking about annexation and those things. It'd be more of, if we're going to talk about larger growth, I think. Like, big growth.
Yeah, maybe like another number in there that says something about collaborating with surrounding counties, planning commissions, or something along those lines.
City Manager O'Toole, I think you and I were part of a conversation with Director Harrington some time back, but there might be some value, because I believe it's essential, to insert some language about advocating for the reestablishment of a county planning department. That is a glaring and significant deficiency in our area, and it would be advantageous to reestablish that. I understand why it was done away with nearly 16, 17 years ago because of the economy and the loss of revenue, the lack of revenue. But I think many of these issues could be resolved in the future if there was a department that advocated and was involved with planning initiatives throughout the county.
Yeah, and perhaps that's the specific action, is just continuing that advocacy or starting a more concentrated effort towards that advocacy.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Seal, any additional questions?
No, sir. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
On that topic, I mean, I think we talked about this, I think I may have mentioned it at our strategic planning session, was there used to be a committee of all of the officials from all of the bordering townships that would get together, and I never recall what that was called.
CQC.
No, not CQC.
The Sustainability Circle.
Sustainability Circle.
They all-
And it was good because it was sort of a great opportunity to have sort of open conversations of, hey, we're thinking about taking on a school in our area, or we're going to build a solar farm, or we're going to do this, or we don't want growth, whatever the case may be. And you sort of kind of saw everybody, in their plain clothes and sort of understood what everybody was thinking. And it was a great opportunity to have a really frank conversation about it. And so it might be just a first step of just kind of trying to see if we can re-engage that group. I do think that that's what CQC is supposed to be. I'm not sure that it has all of the right people at the table for that conversation, and it's a little bit public-facing, that I'm not sure that people really want to necessarily share things that they are thinking are coming down the pipeline if it's just, a projected item. But I do think that that could definitely help us to sort of understand what our other municipalities around us are planning.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
I concur with my fellow colleagues that talked about a regional approach, which I think is more than just our townships, because some of these services that we're dealing with right now will not be solved by just 2 or 3 townships. It's got to happen at the county level. But when we were mentioning, I just forgot it, what I was saying here. Shoot.
CQC, Saline Sustainability Circle, County
Which,
Planning Department?
yeah, those committees have basically kind of just floundered in what they were doing and what they really are focused on. It might be something that we would do with combining with some of the planning commissions or whatever, working on that aspect, as each township has a similar type of board, so somehow coordinate that. No, I had something more. I was going to focus on the idea of, it may come back to me. I'll pass.
All right, yeah, I can come back. Councilmember Rice, any comments or questions regarding this category?
Yeah, now that I'm looking at the previous goal, the supporting viable communities, I'm wondering if goal 3 and goal 5 from that section should be incorporated into this section of purposeful planning and smart growth. The previous section is more kind of the soft areas of creating this viable community. These are really looking at planning and creating tax bases. I'm wondering if those should be flipped into this section we're currently talking about. There is a duplicative section. Goal number 3 of supporting a viable community has a chunk in it that is the same as goal number 3 of the next section. They both kind of start off the same. So I think there's some stuff we can smooth out between those 2 sections.
Okay.
Very good. Do you have anything further, Councilmember Rice?
Nope.
Let me jump back to Mr. Gearbaugh before I go to Councilmember Harmount.
The one I was going to talk about underneath goal 2, when we say work with SMS and recruitment primer and all that, how do we handle more like economic development / economic director / that type of a goal?
That is a great question. I don't know that we've fully addressed it in this strategic plan. And if that is something that's a priority for council, we should absolutely make reference to what that looks like.
Because I'm feeling like, again, as we always keep talking, and Mayor Pro Tem Dillon has always mentioned, we keep forgetting about the other sides of town. And as we look at this overall for our community in terms of economic development, it's a whole balancing of the pie that I want to make sure is occurring. So somewhere in there, I would like to see a formal approach to that or a discussion as part of our goals in the next year.
What would be the formal approach? Would it be the establishment of an economic development director for the entire city?
Yes, something of that, or a department, or something to that nature.
Okay, and you'd want to see that accomplished during the duration of this plan, so sometime between FY '25 and '27?
I would hope so. Yep. I think it's a priority.
I would agree with that.
I agree.
Anybody disagree with that? Okay, all right, very good.
Thank you.
That'll be added without objection. Councilmember Harmount?
Yes, in the previous section, goal number 6, it talks about integrating environmental sustainability and addressing current items. I would like to propose that we add that also to purposeful planning, so thinking with environmental sustainability in mind, so when we're doing our planning. So I think that's a separate item to goal number 6 from the previous section. I don't know if anybody agrees with me on that or not.
could make the case for that.
You make a case.
Restate that one more time,
Okay,
Councilmember Harmon.
so in the previous section, we have a goal number 6 says integrate environmental sustainability into future planning ongoing, and then it talks about identifying low-hanging fruit and pursue community composting initiatives. In the current section that we're talking about, purposeful planning, I think that that needs to also be included in purposeful planning, and that's different than the goal number 6 from the previous section.
So really kind of like a sustainability.
Yeah, like thinking about like LEED certified. If we're going to have a building, and we're planning to have a building, let's think about like incorporating sustainability up front. If we're talking about building a a community, making sure that we have not too much impervious, surfaces, and so kind of planning with it in mind, as opposed to addressing things that what we already have, like the low-hanging fruit and stuff like that.
Okay, is there any objection to that?
Taking number 4 out and making a
Yeah.
goal off of that.
Restate that, Councilmember Rice.
Yes.
Take number 4 out of goal 6 under supporting a viable community.
Okay.
Take number 4 out, which reads, develop more sustainable development policies such as impervious surface requirements, and make that a goal under purposeful planning and smart growth.
That sounds good.
Okay, yeah, I don't object. Everybody comfortable with that?
I would also add something with the building, not just the, impervious surfaces. I think our intention with these are just to give examples, but I think somebody else had mentioned, we don't want to make it be the focus of, it's just supposed to be an example of that section, and we want to make sure we don't lose sight of that.
Did we lose internet again?
No, I'm just having trouble getting it to reconnect, but I did get that information written
Okay.
down.
All right, very good. Do you want to transition then to I believe it's our final category?
Yes, so our final category is prioritize community health, wellness, and safety.
We skipped employee
Light
skills.
skills.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not our final category. So employee skilled workforce. So this category is about retaining existing talent, attracting new talent when positions open, and then maximizing or optimizing the work of both staff, our existing workforce, and committees and commissions.
Mr. Lesh, any questions or comments?
I can't remember for goal 4, who is supposed to be the driver for the optimization of the committees and commissions?
I do not know that we have fully identified that. I would say it's likely going to fall as a shared responsibility between the staff liaison and the council liaison.
Anything else, Mr. Lesh?
Nope.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember CO?
No, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Mr. Lesh brought up a good point, because this was something I was going to mention earlier when someone was mentioning about committees, having a seat at the table to discuss things. I think we've sort of discussed that, committees should be doing the work that the city, in alignment with the city. It should be a process. So they shouldn't be coming up with their own plans of action for things. There should be a directive, and then what they do as a committee is find a way to execute the directive. And so I want to make sure that we're kind of clear that we don't have too many ships sailing in the ocean here as far as which direction we're going in. Because I think that's what we were trying to figure out with the committee for committees, was where the direction is coming from. And so that either needs to live from part of this document or through budget, the CIP, whatever it is, and it needs to be disseminated out to those committees of, this is the goal of the city, now go ahead and achieve it, and, you make the decision of how that's going to happen with the direction of the city.
And that's exactly what I anticipated the final version of the strategic plan to do. There's a lot of references within here about different opportunities for committees to engage or to go after certain recommendations, but again, to do it now with the blessing and direction of council.
Right. So I think that's a really good thing, and just sort of understanding, I guess, I just thought of it again as we were kind of bringing up this goal 4 of optimizing the committees and the commissions, is that I think our community has a lot of great talent, and we just need to be very thoughtful in giving them direction of what to do. Because I think people get tired of just going to meetings to go to a meeting. And so if there's an action attached to it, I think we can be very successful.
Anything else, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
That's all for right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
The only aspect I'm looking at, I mean, I agree with the issue of optimizing our committees and commissions, but really for workforce and so forth is to make sure that we've got a satisfactory and transparent evaluation and working, I guess, feedback loop that we have for our employees so that they feel that they're getting their information to management and management's getting their information to them. I don't know where you would put that. I look underneath the aspect of, retain existing talent, revise the evaluation sign-off sheet. But again, as I've been kind of asking, is this kind of anonymous or some type of reporting ombudsman position thing where employees can provide that information back so that if there are issues, concerns, or whatever, that information can come to be evaluated? And I feel like that's something that we're missing.
So you would want to add something along the lines of creating a open platform or an anonymous platform for sharing comments?
Yep. Sharing comments, providing information that would be beneficial, that gives a way of working that tool. And I know there's a lot of rigmarole with that, but most large organizations have put something in place like that to make sure that if there are concerns and things that cannot be addressed, there is some opportunity to do it around it.
Did you get all that, City Manager O'Toole?
Yes.
Very good. Mr. Gearbaugh, anything else?
Nope.
Councilmember Rice, any comments or questions on this category?
To continue that thought, I think goal number 1.2A, where we were discussing performing stay interviews as part of evaluations, perhaps it could fall under that, where you could also do alternatively some sort of anonymous, so it doesn't have to be during a stay interview where you brought up something. And then I figured out where to put goal number 4 from the top section that we were discussing, under goal number 3 of employing a skilled workforce. I think that's where you could put those about, gosh, I wrote it down, but I can't read my own writing, sorry. Organizational effectiveness, so the build a balanced and inspired workforce, goal number 4. I think most of those can go under goal number 3 of this section.
Okay.
To make that a little more succinct. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Harmount, any questions or comments on this category?
No, I think we talked about this and spent a lot of time on this section. I don't have anything further.
Very good. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to transition to the last category?
Okay. So the last category is prioritize community health, wellness, and safety. This focuses on creating a wellness initiative that is a broad umbrella for those different categories, prioritizing mental health training and awareness, and general community engagement around mental health, wellness, substance abuse, and safety.
Okay, and as was stated tonight and at our most previous session before this evening's work meeting, there seems to be some consensus to broaden and strengthen the verbiage around public safety, accessibility, and perhaps DEI as well. Mr. Lesh, any questions or comments in terms of what's presented in this category?
No, it looks very nice. I think the Chief and City Manager did a nice job of putting nice, short, concise things.
Very good. Mr. CO?
Just a question under goal 2, number 3, where it says streamline confidential counseling services for officers. What do we mean by streamline?
Do you want to speak to that? There's a microphone there if you.
Make sure it's turned on, Chief, and that the green light is illuminated at the base.
I don't see a green light. That was just more so streamlining how they can get access to, we've had different meetings where they've talked to the department heads about the new, I forgot what the new.
EAP program?
Yeah. But it hasn't really been passed down to the officers, just so they would feel more comfortable, because I know when we had an officer that was in somewhat of a crisis, I kind of had to facilitate that, and they were very apprehensive to come forward. So, just reducing the stigma on them taking that step and knowing how to take that step to get some mental health help.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any comments, questions regarding this category?
So yes, actually, going back on goal 2, just for clarification, because it sort of seems a little confusing. So are we prioritizing the mental health of our police officers? Are we, because that seems like that's what number 3 was, or are we prioritize, like, I guess it was just sort of like, we wanted to prioritize training for mental health crises of our officers to deal with it, correct? It seemed like it was worded a little, I wasn't sure who we were providing the service to.
So number 2 was train our officers in identifying and responding to mental health crisis calls, meaning train them so that they
Right.
know how to respond and handle and identify when somebody is in a mental health crisis. But I also don't want to forget that the officers may need help, but it's going to look different than number 2.
Okay.
One's out looking, one's in.
Right, I was trying to figure that out. It was just sort of understanding that aspect, and I understand the importance of both. I just don't know if there's a better way to word it somehow to show that one is sort of internal, one's external.
Or reword the goal, say prioritize mental health training and awareness for police services.
That would be better.
Okay.
Anything else, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
No, I just wanted to, I think that we're fine with this, the way it is, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Just clarification on Goal 5, complete analysis of citywide fire services. Can we expand that include medical emergency services needs? I mean, there's a combination of fire and, unless we're incorporating that all into it. So, like, so much of our response time now is related to medical emergencies, not so much a fire in itself.
Yeah, I think it would just be a matter of how we frame the scope of services for a review of that nature, which I assume will ultimately be at the discretion of council, what we want to include there.
Okay. I just wondering if fire services is supposed to cover that.
Yeah, we could call it instead emergency medical or emergency services.
Citywide emergency services.
I think generally today, in 2024, fire services would imply fire calls and medical.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Nope.
Councilmember Rice?
I don't have anything specific, but I'm just thinking about where we can make sure that in this document, we talk about accessibility and DEI standards. I think ultimately it would probably fall under like a wellness initiative, but I'm also wondering if we could create under Goal 3 something that talks about DEI and accessibility partnerships across the community, because a lot of that falls to accessibility in our, shops, restaurants, schools, and DEI falls under the same kind of scope there. But I do also think that under goal number 1, in establishing a wellness initiative, they'll fall under there as well. I would just like to see it in our words here. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Harmount?
Yes, I don't know if I missed it, but was there somewhere in here where we're addressing domestic violence?
Part of the wellness initiative?
Yeah, as part of the wellness initiative. I don't know that I saw language as far as domestic violence, safe havens, and a procedure and process.
So that would likely come out of the work of the wellness initiative, just from initial meetings of that group. But if there's a
I see
specific
responding
action.
to opioid overdoses is specifically addressed. I think that that's a totally different thing than domestic violence, and I would propose that we would make sure that that's included.
So are you specifically looking for so the reason that's in there is because it's a specific police procedure, so it wouldn't be something the wellness group necessarily recommended. Do you have a specific action item?
Okay, so if there's a call, like for a domestic violence, then what are the next steps? Like, how can somebody that's in a domestic violence situation identify and safely bring up that issue? And then where do we have, what resources do we have for that? Do we have a safe haven? Do we have, I don't know that that language is addressed in our community health and wellness.
Go ahead, Chief.
Well, I think we did include that. Maybe we just didn't put it up there, but we did include it in the Wellness Committee. And we did have a meeting talking about, in fact, we had a representative from Safe House, which I think you're referring to as Safe Haven, come in and talk. So that would be part of the Wellness Committee, was substance use disorder, mental health, and domestic violence.
So, not to interrupt, but so do we have a protocol for handling domestic violence no differently than we do for reducing the stigma?
We do, yes. In fact, it's even a statute that the way officers respond and handle a domestic, making an arrest.
So since we've identified the other ones, I agree with my council member Harmon that perhaps we should add that as a goal 6.
Any objection to that?
So could someone give me what the actual language for that would be?
If Marlene has some statute or whatever, the title of it to refer, we could use that.
So comply with the state statute?
And I think with that goes anything domestic related as well, like personal protection orders, conditional bonds, et cetera.
Yeah, I think, the forward-facing piece to that would be making people aware of that these things exist.
Exactly.
And so I think, I think that's what was getting there.
Okay, City Manager, anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it. Again, the next steps for me would be now taking all of these notes, reworking the draft, putting in that intro section and the reporting section, and having a final draft for you all.
And what's the turnaround for that?
Well, there's a few more changes in here than I was expecting.
Target the second meeting in July?
Unfortunately, that's the week that I'm out.
Okay, what about the first meeting in August?
First meeting in August would be more realistic at this point.
And I'd like to see, this process is
I expect it to
dragging
be
out a little bit.
very, very close. Like, that should be as good as I can get it to final.
Could I be so bold as to ask, perhaps you could even disseminate the document well before the packet goes out for that first meeting in August to give staff and council one last bite at the apple to wordsmith or tweak before it's presented on the first? And then, do you anticipate that this body would formally adopt the strategic plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then from there, the body would adopt the strategic plan, and it'd be the responsibility of the staff liaisons and council liaisons to communicate it out to the individual committees and commissions, any information that is now their responsibility or part of a strategic goal.
Very good. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, before we wrap it up.
Yeah, just really
start meeting
quickly,
comments
one
on-
of the things that I'd really like to see as a goal on this, and I apologize for not mentioning it early, was I mentioned earlier about ADA. I'd like us to have a standard at which, all of anything that's put out on, that's televised, has closed caption, just create standards for it, that everything is done in either Braille or that we've got listening devices and all of these things, and just create a baseline that we're going to utilize for everything, so that when signs are ordered, we order them in a way in which, maybe they have Braille on them, maybe we have signage which speaks back to people so that they understand.
So we do have under Area 2, Goal 2, Section 2, so 222, is ensuring inclusivity in messaging, ADA compliance specifically, assessment of needs and training.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. Like I said, I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost in a goal somewhere. I just want it to be a priority, that we just have a standard, that everything that goes out is done in, whether we need to put it out in 2 different languages or what that basis is.
Sure. So I can add underneath that ensure a standard is adopted as part of communication plan, and then that assessment of needs and tracking.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll expect to see a final document presented at our first meeting in August, and a draft copy should be disseminated to department heads and to council well in advance of that date. So please disseminate any additional comments, questions, or modifications to the city manager, because we'd like to be in a position to approve this at our first meeting in August, which of course is just around the corner. If there's nothing further to be brought forward this evening, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn this work meeting at 6:59.
So moved.
Moved by Lesh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. We are going to convene into regular session in 2 minutes. If you'd please break down those white tables. Use the restroom if you need to. I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Members present this evening are council members Gearboss, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Dillon, and Marl. From city staff, we have the city manager, the city clerk. I believe the city treasurer has left us, but we do have the DPW director, wastewater treatment superintendent, and engineering office represented. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed to the first of two public comment periods. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time to make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items? I would defer to the city clerk. Were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? No, sir. Easy enough. Then we will proceed to the first and only presentation, which is a natural gas balance program, and it will be presented by our regional representative from DTE, Ms. Molly Lumpert-Coy. Molly, we welcome you here this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. It's great to be here tonight. I'm going to talk about our natural gas balance program that we're hoping to work in cooperation with the city on and with Washtenaw County residents. We've been working with Sunshine Lambert and Larry Sears and Colleen O'Toole on this in wording of how this will roll out. But let me first state by saying the city of Saline is going to be a recipient of the DTE Energy Foundation for 20 trees, and that's a separate program. We run with Eagle and our municipalities. We've planted now 50,000 trees across Michigan with 500 communities. So we're super excited about that. It's a way for our foundation to give back. And so we're going to partner, we think, around the recreation center and street trees on that program. So in my conversations with Larry and Sunshine, I heard that you guys really had a lot of tree damage last year with the storms. And so that's when we thought about bringing this program in addition to the 20 trees that were donated through the foundation. So what is DTE Clean Vision Natural Gas Balance? Let me just move here. It basically is a natural gas balance, offers residential, small business customers an option to affordably balance their carbon emissions from natural gas. It's a totally voluntary program. And so we've had this program around for a number of years, and Washtenaw County has had a high buy-in rate across the county. Customers with active natural gas accounts in good standing are eligible to enroll, and they can change their enrollment status at any time, once per billing cycle. The program sets a 1 to 4 level ranging from $4 to $16 a month added directly to customer bills. But again, let me just mention again that it's totally voluntary. The program accomplishes emission reduction, so it's kind of like a carbon offset. So if you're looking to improve your overall sustainability, this is a great way to consider doing that. Carbon offsets produced by exclusive forest projects. We've got 15 counties in Upper Michigan where we're planting and reforesting trees. So that's one form of carbon offset. The other one is renewable natural gas. We're currently working with a landfill in Canton and in Grand Rapids wastewater treatment facility. We've had a landfill to gas program in Riverview as well. So over the past several years, DTE has launched community incentive campaigns that entice customers to enroll in the natural gas program. And so with this, we partner with communities to be the recipients or the home for the trees, if you will. And so past campaigns have included Ann Arbor, East Grand Rapids, Muskegon, and just recently Dearborn. So if the enrollment goal is reached within the campaign period, 10 trees will be planted in an agreed upon location for the community to enjoy. So in this case, we've talked to the community. We know that you need replacement of street trees, and that's what we would target for this program. The 2024 Saline Tree Incentive details, we're hoping that the program would launch in July, run for a month, and again, it would be any signups throughout Washtenaw County. If we get 100 new enrollments made during that period, then we will plant the 10 trees.
Having a little bit of technical difficulties this evening, Molly. We apologize.
No problem at all.
Your presentation is no longer up on the screens that council can see.
Put it back up. Thank you. Is that what you did in there? We're back up, okay. So then we would plant the 10 trees in the community, target residents through email, paid social media campaign, some outbound calling, partner with Saline and other communities to help promote the campaign and to help achieve our goal. And that's basically it. So we just want to partner with Saline. You're one of our communities, and we would love to plant 10 trees in your community and replace some of those street trees. It is totally voluntary, so folks can choose to sign up or not. But again, we've had a really great participation rate in Washtenaw County, and this particular area seems very open to wanting to do things for carbon offset and for sustainability goals.
Very good.
So be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Well, let me just say again, we appreciate you being here tonight. More importantly, I appreciate you reaching out to me directly to inform me of this program. You called me when I was on the lateral elliptical at the rec center, but when you said you wanted to talk about some additional trees that could be provided to Saline, I was eager to take the call because, of course, as you mentioned, this is in addition to what has already been pledged for this calendar year. So hopefully your subsequent conversations with staff, with the city manager, DPW, Parks and Rec director, and PR generalist have been productive. I'm glad to hear that, and I'm very supportive of this and eager to move forward. As city manager, before we open up for questions or comments from the dais, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think this is a great opportunity to work collaboratively, hopefully achieve a goal that the city has for itself, as well as continue to promote to our residents environmental responsibility.
Very good. Again, I'm going to start on my right and on my left this evening. Councilmember Lesh, any questions or comments for our guest?
Just big shout out to DTE. I mean, you're doing a great job with renewables, with solar and wind too, so it's great.
Mr. Seo?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
I'll pass.
Okay. Councilmember Rice?
So if we choose to do this, or the city of Saline, is there information that's going to be going out to residents?
Absolutely. In fact, Colleen and I and Larry Sturs and Sunshine Lambert, we put out a draft, and the city's looked at it and reviewed it. So we just wanted to make sure to come in front of this body first, and then we would kick that off. Also talking with the chamber, they'll put it out to chamber members as well. So you've got the business community, residential community. So we'll try and go through both of our social media outreach efforts to get the message out there. And again, it's not just Saline, it's all across Washington County.
And what needs to happen on the consumer end aside from signing up?
So there is a link and a web link they can go to, and then they can officially sign up. It's very simple. So they can sign up for how much they want to donate, if you will, or add to their bill, whether it be, as simple as, a small percentage or all of their bill would be dedicated to natural gas balance. So, and again, it's totally voluntary, but a very simple sign-up process.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Harmount?
I love it. I think more trees,
Yes.
great. I'm interested in, maybe we can have a side conversation about it, but I'm interested to hear more about the landfill to gas program, and I'm wondering, since we don't really have a landfill in Saline, is there any thoughts with DTA tapping into wastewater treatment digesters to harvest
We
gas?
can always take that back. H.J. Decker, I think he was here at the Large Business Summit that the chamber and the city hosted together. But his operation runs those. And so, we can always take back that information and get you more detail on that, and I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Molly, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time this evening.
Appreciate
Stay
it.
cool. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Yes.
We're going to transition now to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion.
Mayor, I'd like to remove 24-119,
24.
GIS professional services.
Okay, so that will then appear as the second item under new business, I believe. 24, no, it'll be the last item. Second to last, if I'm correct. Is that right? Yes. It'll appear directly before 24-126. Would you move then to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I believe.
I was going to also remove 24-127, which is the bond resolution for discussion.
Okay, so that then will become the last item. Was staff notified of these changes so that they could address questions and concerns before tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gearba?
No.
Okay. All right, then would you like to move to approve the consent agenda as amended, Mr. Gearba?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dylan. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to open the public hearing, affording the public an opportunity to speak to an IFT request from Liebherr Aerospace and Automotive?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Lesh, seconded by Gearba. All those in favor of opening the public hearing at 7:14 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this issue?
Move to close.
Moved by CO to close. Was that seconded by Dylan?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, and that's a motion to close at 7:14. All those in favor of closing the public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. City Manager O'Toole, would you care to make a brief comment to this, on this matter?
Absolutely. So we received an IFT-E request, which is an industrial facilities tax exemption request from Liebherr. Liebherr does have a long history of making these types of requests and successfully completing the projects for which they submit. When we receive requests of this nature, there are 4 guidelines by which we determine the merits of the particular length of time that an individual is looking for. One is the public interest. We do see that this project meets the public interest. It meets goals 1, 2, and 6 of our specific guidelines. We look at economic feasibility. No reason to believe that Liebherr cannot complete a project of this nature based on their public filings and past history. We look at job creation and wages. The individual has, or the petitioner has confirmed that they expect a minimum of 24 new jobs to be created. All jobs are expected to exceed 150% of the state minimum, again, in accordance with our guidelines. And then we look at the total value of private investment. In this case, depending on how you assess it, if you include real property components or just or real property and personal property components, between 8 and 9.9 million. Additional considerations that we do look at, in this case, we did have to go back in time, and the reason we don't have an action item on the agenda today is to make sure that we had all of these certifications complete for the prior applications that this particular business has received. They have since completed that certification process. They're fully up to date. I reviewed it myself personally, and I have no issues making a recommendation for a 7-year exemption at our meeting on July 1st. And that would be a 7-year exemption for the personal, or for the real property. We do not make it a it is a policy now of the city to not do real property for a number of reasons. Or sorry, personal property.
City Manager, remind me, because I know this is, I hate to speak for him, but I know this was Mr. Gearba's recommendation, as it was mine, and I believe the sentiment was shared by your office as well. But did we previously mention that it's our suggestion that we do away with the Special Projects Commission and in the future advance IFTs directly to this body?
I don't know that we've made any formal update on that, but this is a great time to reference the fact that, yes, at this point, these are rather infrequent requests, and we may be having some changes to that in the future. As you know, we'll be talking about a commercial rehabilitations district, but I think ultimately the low number of requests that we're likely to receive can easily be handled by existing staff in this body.
Mr. Gearba, again, I didn't mean to speak for you. You concur with that position?
Yeah, you had mentioned that. I think the issue with the Special Project Commission is that it never meets, and this was the only reason why it was meet. And if we want to, we can always create our own commission for any issue or topic that we want to discuss.
Well, and I would say we can even treat it similar to the way that we treat real estate purchases and form a subcommittee of council and staff.
Yeah, and I just appreciate that you've addressed this a little bit more in terms of addressing it through the requirements and more specifics. In the past, we used to approve up to 12 years, and now we're trying to reduce it back down to a reasonable number of years.
So getting back to the Special Projects Commission for just a moment, I would ask my colleagues to not be surprised in the future if you see a motion likely on a consent agenda to dissolve the Special Projects Commission. It is simply an advisory body. It cannot actually make a formal decision. It makes recommendations to City Council. And as City Manager O'Toole has noted it, along with Mr. Gearba, when personal property was done away with for manufacturing facilities, the demand for IFTs or tax abatements declined dramatically. So the meeting that we held a month ago, I believe, was the first in 4 or 5 years.
Correct.
And previously, when I was on the Special Project Commission as a citizen and as a council member, they would meet like 3, 4, maybe even 5 times a year considering abatement. So I think we can just streamline our process and immediately direct those requests to this body, who's obligated to make a policy decision on them. We do have guests from Lee Bear this evening. Gentlemen, do you care to make any comment at this time? Not a requirement, but I wanted to provide you the opportunity if you'd like it. Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Will Dew. I'm a Managing Director Commercial. My cohort over here, Mr. Faber, is in charge of the operations. I just wanted to clarify on the personal exemption. You had made comment that it's your practice or habit not to extend the exemption for personal property. And is that due to the EMPP tax exemption as to why you're not looking at the personal property aspect?
Do you want me to?
Please.
Certainly. So there's a number of reasons why some communities, including ours, have moved away from considering any personal property exemptions. One, the state legislator has developed a new plan, a new legislation that incentivizes certain types of property. It is the belief of these bodies that the state legislator went through its consideration, and if it chose at that time not to include certain property, that was intentional and why it wasn't, and that local jurisdictions shouldn't go out of their way to then supersede basically what the state has identified as a priority for economic development. The other thing is any sort of property is inherently not long-term. Real personal property is not long-term. It doesn't need to stay in the community for longer than the period of time in which it's put into service for the exemption. So unlike real property improvements, there's no tangible long-term recapture of that tax benefit to the community. It's solely for the benefit of the individual business.
Okay, thank you.
Are there questions, again, noting that we will not take formal action until our subsequent meeting on July the 1st. Are there questions for either the petitioner or the city manager? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Just ancillary question, my apologies, is that as they build out, will there be a sidewalk as part of that project?
That would be a question. Well, I believe Planning Commission has approved the final site plan already, have they not?
Yes. And I
In the
believe-
future.
Yeah, I think as the buildings get closer to Maple Road, there will be more of a mandate or requirement for the installation of a sidewalk.
As they build the campus out and then addressing it right now. That's at least what the recommendation was planning.
Okay.
This is an addition on a existing building that is not anywhere close to where a public trail or pathway would be along Maple.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Mr. Seal?
So this is for an addition to an existing building, not a brand-new building? Or is it a brand-new building?
We can ask the petitioners. I'm not familiar with what was approved at Planning Commission.
To the original building?
No,
or
to the second building in the rear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, to the second building. So we're moving inwards from the
Okay.
existing building towards Woodland Drive, not towards Maple.
All right, very good.
It was originally proposed years ago, but it was postponed, I think, by
That
the
was,
pandemic and
that was our
everything.
sister company, LGT. They were supposed to build on the Maple side. And this never came together.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. All right, if there's nothing further, we'll revisit this issue as an enumerated action item on July 1. We'll transition to new business item 24-125, fee book update. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Treasurer Colon to adopt or not to adopt FY25 City of Saline fee book.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearboss, simply to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. City Treasurer Cole, do you care to make any comments this evening?
Good evening. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to talk about Saline's annual fee book. This will be for the fiscal year 24-25 that we're in consideration. And this document is very critical. It's essential because it sets our fees for municipal services for the entire year. Although it may be updated throughout the year at any point in time, obviously with approval of council. A couple of items I wanted to point out. First, we went through the fee book this year, and majorly have ensured that all the fees cover our expenses, except for with a few exceptions, like where we're legally constrained to certain amounts that we can charge. or where competitive prices in like communities of comparable size are about the same as what we have in the fee book. We've also consolidated similar items in the fee book so that there's no duplication. We have adjusted those rates that were really, really low and hadn't been touched for sometimes 15, 20 years up for inflation. Specifically anything that was over 5 years, we took a very hard look at and did this analysis. We also noted throughout the book, you can see the fees that are legally constrained so that you are aware of which ones those are. In addition to all of these changes, we added 2 new departments. So the engineering department and the treasury department. You'll now see in sections with our new developed fees. However, Engineer Humphreys is still working for 6 months to develop her new fee book section, and we're just a little short of it being completed and reviewed by some outside consultants, and we're planning to bring that back within the next couple months. Additionally, our water rate study will be completed this fall, and if there are any changes to the rates at that point in time, we'll need to come back and adjust the fee book accordingly. One notable thing that I'd like to talk to you about for your consideration specifically is on page 30, we talk about the practice of performing outside lab tests and the fees that we charge for that at the wastewater treatment plant, and that is in our lab. Currently, we only have one company that is owned by a city employee that conducts tests at our facilities. These fees are collected and do cover the costs of the services provided and the chemicals consumed so that we're not losing any money for the city. But I would like to have a consensus drawn around whether we should disallow or allow that testing to be performed in our lab. Lastly, I just thank you again for your consideration and look forward to the guidance that you'll give us tonight.
Very good. Hang tight, City Treasurer, because there might be questions best addressed by you. City Manager O'Toole, is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
No, I think that was quite.
Okay, other questions for the City Treasurer regarding updates to the fee book? Mr. Gearbaum?
Just a general overall, you know, we've had this concern, and we were talking about how we're now going to provide loan or incentives, grants for people that are applying for different types of, you know, projects or doing a plan to redevelop downtown or whatever. When you look at our fees now and comparing them to other communities and the reality of what, you know, people are able to pay, are we getting to a point of a disincentive to invest in terms of, I'm really concerned about homeowners and individuals trying to purchase and do their homes and things. And whatever you've reviewed over this last, have you included the building department, all of those? And what do you feel from a perspective of us as a comparison to, I mean, Ben's not here, but what do you feel?
Certainly, this could not have been prepared, and I forgive me for not mentioning earlier, but each department head was heavily involved in this process. In fact, they were majorly the owners of their own sections. So with Treasury just going through for one final review after the pass, making sure that it seemed reasonable. So the department heads were very, very engaged and involved in this process. We did more of the looking at it for the cost effectiveness and comparability to other communities, and in researching, just making sure that we had like rates. Comparably, we are right in line. We are certainly not far over or far below other communities, which is exactly our goal.
Is there anything that you felt was really undervalued at this point in time?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. The majority of my questions, we talked about some of them, stem from kind of the rec, the Parks and Rec. And my big one is that currently we are allowing individuals, and we don't delineate, it doesn't appear between residents and non-residents, they can rent the pavilions in our parks. And I understand that, and I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure how I feel about having all-day rentals. These are public parks. That's the only shelter that we have in them. It's the only, like, refuge from sun, rain, whatever. And so to have them tied up all day, especially when you can rent both pavilions, I do have a concern about that because they are, you know, for the public use. So I want to be very mindful about how that's being done and what we have in place for should there be a storm and people need to get out. You know, do we have a clause within those rental agreements that say you must house people that are in the park should there be an emergency situation or whatever? So understanding that. I also think that the fee that we are charging is on the low side for an all-day rental. When you look at what it costs to rent either tents on your own or to rent an actual place, I think that we're on the low side, and just understanding what is involved with our DPW, with setup, with cleanup, with trash, and all of those aspects of it. And we are providing electricity and power and all of these kind of things to it. So just sort of understanding, is this something that we want to continue on? Obviously, I'd like to have those pavilions available for use, but also they are part of our public parks. And so I want to make sure that we have an avenue for other people to enjoy them too. That if I want to go to the park and have a picnic, I didn't know that it was reserved, and I've gotten all the way there with my kids and my picnic basket, and now we've got really no place to go. So I'd like to kind of understand that a little bit better, and whether or not that's something we need to do. And the other piece of it is some of the other aspects within, some of our fees seem very nominal, and that they haven't been raised. Like, I think you can rent the racquetball court at the rec center for $5. And I don't think that rate has changed since early 2000s. And so is that really the going rate? Would we be better off, not charging it? Are people charging, are we utilizing it at $5, or could we better utilize it as a different space? Or if it's not being used, should it be transferred into something else? So I'd like to really take a full look at a lot of those outside of the fee book and see.
Okay, Councilmember Rice, did you have a question?
Yes, two, please. First, table of contents needs to be updated, if you don't mind. It's way off.
Is it?
Yeah, I think just with all the additions, it shifted everything, and nobody hit the button to update the table of contents. The second one, is there a risk? I'm asking someone from the risk committee. Is there a risk to having a staff member performing external lab work in our lab under the preface of their own business?
Well, I was going to get into it, but I was waiting for the other questions.
Let's deal with that at the subsequent motion.
Okay.
Because that's actually, after we either adopt or not adopt the feed book, we'll have a discussion on outside testing and the appropriateness of that. But yeah, good question, but just hang on to that for 1 second.
And then lastly are the water connection permit charges are going up significantly and have over the last few years significantly. Were we just behind in that? That's what I figured. Okay.
That's a conversation that dates back probably a decade now. where we're
Yeah.
starting to focus on the need to update, revise, and
Same with utility rates and
Correct.
whatnot. Kind of to Mr. Gearboss' point is that going to be a hindrance to new business in the city of Saline, or are we now just on track with other cities?
We are now on track with other cities, and more
Okay.
importantly, it covers the costs that we need it to.
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to know. That's it.
Any additional questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to adopt or not to adopt?
Move to adopt.
Moved by CO to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lesh. I'll get you on the next one, Mr. Gearboss. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Rice, excuse me.
Is this now where we?
No, in the subsequent motion.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good. If there's no discussion, it's been moved by CO, seconded by Lesh to adopt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. The subsequent motion will be a motion to allow or not to allow outside testing of city water and wastewater lab facilities. Is there a motion, or you could simply move to acknowledge?
Move to acknowledge, maybe a verbal report.
Yep, perfectly in order. Moved by Gearboss to acknowledge the verbal report. Did you want to second that, Councilmember Rice?
Yep.
Okay. City Manager O'Toole, you'd make a fine council member, but it's not the role you're serving. Councilmember Rice asked a very bona fide question.
Yep.
Do you care to comment on that? And then maybe Mr. Gearboss can also provide some insight as the chair of the Risk Mitigation Working Group.
Certainly. So the way that the state licensing works, our individual operators hold the license and do assume liability for anything under their license. So they are free to go out depending on our own personal guidelines, but they are able to go out and perform work at other facilities. Where I think we run into issues with the city operations is whether we want that lab testing to be done on our equipment with a certain dollar figure associated with it or otherwise. I would never recommend to this body that we get into the business of being the tester. So the city of Saline should not assume that liability for any other facility in the future. Whether an individual wants to assume that liability on their own through a personal business is their own risk to weigh.
Mr. Gearbaugh, anything you'd like to add?
This came to our attention, I think some of us, even on the wastewater task force, knew that there was testing going on, but we assumed the testing was part of a service that the city of Saline was providing. It wasn't until recently where we discovered an outstanding receivable that was owed by this employee's firm that it was really a separate entity that was trying to do this testing, utilizing the city's assets and basically performing it. Apparently, this has been going on for decades. The concern that came about this is I've seen this happen before where, companies do this or even the university does this thing, but it's provided through the auspice of the city itself. The city takes on the responsibility, all of those aspects. Apparently, there's other communities that allow this to go on, but from my perspective and from a risk perspective, yes, this is, as Ms. O'Toole has just mentioned, it's a risk and an assumption that, they supposedly are taking on all the risks, but really it's the city taking on it. Where my concern is this is a business that was a side business by an employee that was being run through the city, and we didn't really know about it until some investigation was done by our treasurer and understanding the whole realm about this. The biggest concern on it was that the individual was floating a loan, basically, to the city for thousands of dollars that hadn't paid on the receivables for months. This is an issue that I've discussed with the city manager, I've discussed with our treasurer, that this is an issue that, from my perspective, falls underneath malfeasance, falls underneath the issue of utilizing city assets appropriately, but because we had staff that weren't necessarily aware of what this was going on, and actually, from my perspective, a bit of collusion because our former treasurer would have known that this was going on. This is an issue that not only do we address here, that I don't want to see it going forward, but a bigger policy that we need to deal with is employees that have side businesses and working with the city. As we've discovered in the last few months, we have people that have had either this side construction businesses, DJing, event planning, floor coverings. All of this needs to be a policy that we have. Any employee that has a business needs to disclose that second business to find out what kind of conflict of interest or whatever we have. So this is a bigger picture for me. This raised that concern and has been addressed on our risk that we identified this. Fortunately, we have a treasurer that has highly qualified, that has known and understood this, and my reviewing of the receivables has identified other concerns that have been as this has come forward. The concern right now for this specific issue is to not provide this service, even though some of the areas that have been using this may impact them. But again, this is not our issue. The employee is concerned that this is going to affect their income. This is not our issue. And secondly, I believe that this is a bigger and more larger concern, but based on how it's been dealt with, that's up to this council and how they want to move forward on this.
Let me, if I may, stick on the one point that Mr. Gearbaugh made. In the absence of Community Development Director Harrington, who's the official staff liaison to our new council policy subcommittee, I'm assuming that between his office and your office, we've made note of this concern and risk. And to the point that my colleague just articulated, I would be hopeful that our policy committee can visit or evaluate this issue and make a recommendation sometime in the not-too-distant future.
So that group is really geared towards ordinance adoption or ordinance changes. This would be a personnel policy issue. I will note our existing personnel policy does require individuals, staff members, to report when they have a second job. It is supposed to be reported to the supervisor. I think what is missing here is an appropriate process for then making sure that information is articulated to the city treasurer and the city manager to determine that we aren't.
So the internal
Yeah.
policy needs some revision and modification, is what you're saying, and that between your office and whomever else you deem appropriate, you can make that necessary change. Does that need to come to city council then?
Well, yes, because it'll be a part of the personnel policy, which subsequently is adopted by you all.
Okay, so not a council policy.
I think we can make a very clean change within our existing personnel policies. We just needed direction from council that that was your intent, that we do not want to continue that service.
I'm assuming there's no objection from the dais to move forward with that policy change. Okay, seems unanimous. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Yerbo. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Just similar, just the issue of that, this is similar to the nepotism policy, that this disclosure needs to be done to management so that council is aware of these situations. These things fortunately have been caught. They were things that were done in the past, and we cannot have these moving forward. I mean, some of the things where some of these activities could be IRS concerns and some other issues. So at this point in time, I mean, I believe there should have been a different action taken at this point in time, but I am not the city manager.
Councilmember Rice, anything you wanted to add? I know you had some thoughts or concerns on this matter.
I think that my concerns that go deeper to include a personnel policy of disclosing a secondary business, there also needs to be a policy or procedure wherein, sure, if you're a DJ and you have a DJ business, you go through the same process that all other entities go through. You either bid or something along those lines. Because I don't want to stifle people who have outside businesses who, would like to work on weekends or evenings or things like that. But I think it needs to be a very clear process for choosing who that person is so as not to cross that line of, nepotism from within. So I think that's probably a separate issue. It might go into some sort of contracting or a finance type personnel issue instead of just disclosures.
I think we can write that. I imagined writing into the personnel policy. The personnel policy in brief right now states that individuals who have a second job should report that to their supervisor. I would go further to say that it needs to be reported to the supervisor in written form and then put into their personnel record and signed off by the city treasurer and city manager. That way, when we are going through procurement, we're not supposed to single source anything under a certain amount, and we would flag those for any sort of single sourcing as well.
Yeah, that's kind of my point there. And I realize that some of these are, I don't know what your single source threshold is for, like, cost-wise.
Well, the single source is a little bit more flexible, right? Because we may have someone who makes a very expensive piece of equipment, and that is the equipment we need to buy. You'll single source that. But when you're going through like professional services, anything over $3,000 really, that's above a department head's threshold, would need to have at least 3 quotes.
Yeah, but you're talking $3,000
Yeah.
per instance, but say we are doing the same type of activity over and over and over again, and we keep hiring the same person over and over again because they're a city employee. That's where
Yeah.
this is getting kind of gray and muddy. And I think we need to really think that out and make sure that we're not crossing the line when it comes to that.
Yeah, if I may suggest, perhaps what we could do is anytime we're hiring someone or looking at hiring someone that does have a relation to the city, because we'll know about that, we can force the 3-quote rule into that situation. So that
That
when we
that's
have those
perfect.
situations apparent, we can
That
ensure
way, yeah.
that we have the best price. And
Absolutely.
And I would assume that the employee would probably.
Could we,
Sure.
that policy modification, can we turn that around in relatively short order? Could that be something on our July 1st meeting or our second meeting of the month?
Yes, I believe we can make that on the July 1st meeting.
Very good, okay. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just one other, as part of our policy, my concern is, and similar, this is what the regions at the university is, we do not conduct business with our employees. I believe that should be the policy. We should not be we should not be doing that type of thing. It's a conflict of interest, conflict of commitment, those type of situations. There should only be a very rare, and the only example I've ever saw that to be an issue is whether that person held a patent on a certain type of product or something like that that was required. This type of thing is, we are hiring you as an employee. You may run a business, but we're not going to fund that business. this approach that occurred by this employee was basically borrowing against the taxpayers' dollars and should not have occurred.
So if I may, it would be great to get consensus from council, because writing that policy change is going to be a lot easier if you all just want me to say that one sentence.
I could be amenable to it, but again, this is a small city. I don't want to stifle people from having second jobs that they really care about that could potentially, become something for them. So a DJ, a baker, something along those lines. I don't want to stifle that, but I completely understand Mr. Garabow's point to the risk. I would be amenable to that one sentence, but I'm also hesitant because of that.
Anybody else have some thoughts on the matter? Mr. CEO?
Some of these things, I think, are the employee acting on their own time with their own equipment, with their own property, who then bring the service to the city at a cost to the city. I'm not sure, but what if the city doesn't go ahead and engage them like they would any other service? That is, they look around and see if it's a reasonable price, number one, and if there's anybody else in the marketplace. I certainly wouldn't object to them being selected if that were in the best interest of the city to do so. I don't think just because they're an employee, it necessarily would disbar them from providing the service to the city.
Clear enough? Councilmember Dillon, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Kind of going back to the specifics of the issue at hand. So what I'd like to understand is, I understand the employee holds the license. What happens when that employee is no longer an employee of the city? Does the city now have an onus to keep on that business? Because if you're talking about something that is very timely, do they have time? It's not like, oh, we just need to find a new guy to lay carpet. This is something very specific that is being reported out. And so then would we have to take on that responsibility of continuing it until they found somebody else to do that service? And I guess I don't want to be a bridge to anything like that. I don't want the city to be involved. And as Mr. CEO just mentioned, I mean, I think there's a clear difference when you're using city assets. I think that's, for me, that's a really, it's not a fine line in the sand. That's a big Sharpie, black line that we need to understand. And so, I mean, that's where I'm at with this particular case. And then as far as, I think that disclosing is absolutely essential. And, understanding, as Councilmember Rice had said, there may be situations where there's really no conflict. It's a different type of a business. They have their own materials, they have their own equipment, and they're just providing a service, and they've gone through the same process as any other vendor. I just don't want to give preferred treatment because they're an employee.
Mr. Lesh, any thoughts on this matter?
Well, as a consultant, I am well aware of this whole procedure, and again, using anything done outside of the assets of the city, I think is fine, but, there has to be a clear delineation between doing your business with city property versus personal property.
And Councilmember Harmount, anything you'd like to add?
I just did want to add one thing. City Manager O'Toole, I didn't know was there a time frame of disclosure, like you need to disclose that within X amount of time? I think that's an aspect that would be addressed.
Yeah, to my recollection, I don't know that we specify a specific amount of time, but yes, we should,
I
yeah.
think that we should do that.
I'm anticipating from what I'm hearing, I personally really like some of Mayor Pro Tem Dillon's comments about use of city assets being a dividing line in terms of what would be suitable and not suitable. I think we can work with something like that, and possibly just require an annual certification by staff of what if any other source of income.
Evaluation, it should be that's normally where you would sign off.
Yeah, when you start and then annually as part of the evaluation process, do you have any other jobs or sources of income?
And based on the feedback that you're hearing from council tonight, you still think you can turn this around at either our first meeting in July or our second meeting in July for review and approval?
Yes.
Easy enough, okay, excellent. City Treasurer Cole, anything you'd like to add?
I just wanted to clarify so that when we come back with this recommendation, at that point in time after you pass it, it will be in effect. This is not something that starts to be effective as of now. Just continue this practice.
So if council is adopting the fee, council has adopted the fee book, that would be effective July 1. That's the one, our fee book takes effect July 1.
Wastewater Treatment Superintendent, Water Treatment Superintendent Briggs, did you have a comment? Okay. Nope, not at all. You're going to be the last comment before we vote on the motion to acknowledge and then a motion to allow or not to allow.
So your discussion kind of bypassed the actual question. And I just want to make sure we don't lose this question that says to allow or not allow outside testing of the city water and wastewater lab facilities. I see no problem with doing that itself. For instance, maybe Pittsfield Township needs something done. We can do it for them. We might need something done. We could ask them to do it. So I don't want to lose that particular part of this.
Gotcha.
Regardless of the other.
Broader issue.
And and that was kind of the assumption, I think we were all thinking, was that was being done by you, like an internal recharge or billing this. So what you would be able to do is, we would bill it, but we would be the primary biller and also the one conducting it. And
Right.
it would have no third-party involvement, no employee, beyond our
Right.
own employee doing it, which is what I always anticipated and thought was happening. I think you kind of did too.
Right. So, for instance, this particular employee we're talking about is very near ending his service with us and is going to continue working. So if he ends his service with us, are we going to allow him to bring us stuff to test or not? Again, this is, this is something that started many years ago, just so you're aware.
Right.
Travis Point, evidently we were doing testing for Travis Point a long time before any other individual took up the actual work over there.
Sure.
So, again, it's just, you don't want to burn your bridges because, if you need a test done that's a 24-hour test and like a fecal test, and you can take it to Pittsfield and they'll put it in their incubator because ours is down and we can't get it done any other way, you don't want to necessarily burn those bridges.
I appreciate the perspective. Thank you. Okay. Real quick before we vote on a motion to acknowledge receipt, Mr. Seal?
Just one other thing. There's another thing, too, that occurs, I know, especially in the police service, where a police officer will be requested by another agency to come and participate in like an oral process for promotion or selection or something of that sort. And it's done on company time. They go and they represent themselves as a Saline police officer. I used to do that many times for Port Huron Police. I knew the chief there. I would participate in their oral interview process for promotion to lieutenant or other ranks, other specialties. And I did it on company time and with the blessing of the city. And they reciprocated too. Now there I was providing a service where I was on company time, being paid by the city of Saline, yet performing the service for the city of Port Huron. I'd hate to see that kind of professional cooperation go away.
Yeah, I think if that's the intent of council to keep that open, we could just add language to the motion that say that we would allow for other licensed municipal agencies as needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It would simply be for outside businesses if you wanted to no longer allow that testing.
I think that's very important because we want that reciprocated.
Right.
It's important to get that outside perspective, especially when you're hiring key positions within the organization. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, before we vote on the motion to
So
acknowledge
thank
receipt.
you. So on that topic then, would there be an opportunity when you're adding language that it's just your supervisor, the city manager has to sign off on that? Because, I mean, there are things like, I think what Mr. Cito is saying is something like, I know that, like, we've had the city manager has sat in on other city manager interviews in other communities that she's doing during the workday and such. Is that similar to what you're saying, Mr. Cito?
Yes.
So obviously, yeah, because we've had we've used people in our community also for those same tasks. So I guess understanding, and maybe it's just you've got to get the approval of your whoever your supervisor is to that, or whether it's just the approval of your office at that point, or HR, to be able to partake, to make sure that there isn't any, that you're looking to make sure there isn't a conflict.
I think specifically in relation to the lab, I would defer to our licensed operators, because they're the individual, Superintendent Briggs is the individual that's listed as the responsible party for those plants with the state of Michigan. And so they would have to sign off on any sort of lab testing that was occurring from an outside agency. But I think certainly if we limit it to other municipal agencies exclusively, that liability coverage is going to be understood to stand with the municipality.
Okay, very good. One last comment before we vote here on the motion to acknowledge receipt.
I want to be very clear about what we're voting for here.
We're just to acknowledge receipt right now,
Okay,
okay?
but,
Yep.
okay, then the next.
That's all, that's the only motion I have on the floor right now.
All right, I'll hold till the next one.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by Rice to acknowledge receipt of the verbal report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to allow, not to allow, or is there some additional language that someone would like to insert into the proposed motion regarding outside testing of city water and wastewater lab facilities?
I'd like to defer to the city manager.
Do you have any comment or recommendation prior to offering a motion from the floor?
Yes, so what, based on your comments, what I have is to amend the motion to read, to allow or not allow outside testing at the city water and wastewater lab facilities by any parties other than municipally owned and operated plants.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
To allow then, Mr. Gearba, based on the modified language that was just articulated by the city manager?
Correct.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
I'm going to get Rice on this one, Mr. CEO. I heard her voice first, I'll get you on the next one. Okay? Do you want to reread that motion for council's benefit and for the public's benefit?
Sure.
So it'll be to allow now.
Okay, to allow outside testing at the city water, to allow outside testing at the city water and wastewater lab facilities. Oh, now I got to rewrite that. It's really so you're really voting to not allow outside testing at the city water and wastewater lab facilities by any party other than municipally owned and operated plants. So you're barring third parties from, is how that's currently
We need
written.
to change that to the positive then.
Okay.
To allow outside testing at the city water and wastewater lab facilities.
By municipally
by
owned and operated.
municipal Owned and operated
But
license holders or whatever.
Part.
However you want to say.
no, doesn't it have to
that'll
be
the same
through
thing.
the city, like at the request of the city, or it's not the request?
It's
At the-
no different than the way we provide services from like our engineering. If we would only provide it to other municipal.
We would only provide it to other than municipal agencies.
Through a city-approved recharge.
So to
System.
allow outside testing at the city water and wastewater lab facilities by municipally owned and operated agencies at the approval of the plant superintendent,
City.
at a cost to be determined by the plant superintendent.
But do we need to put in something that it's not through a third party? Or does it have to be because it has to be the license holder? Is it the license holder acting on behalf of
No,
the city?
we're saying that it can only be someone acting on behalf of another municipality. So it'd be Pittsfield Township sending a operator, well, really, YCUA sending an operator over to the city of Saline lab to perform a
So we
test.
allow outside people
Let's
into our?
defer.
We would not allow any further
How about this?
outside.
We'll postpone this
Okay.
to our next meeting so you have proper language for us.
I think we largely have it. I mean, to allow outside testing at the city water lab facilities by municipally owned and operated agencies, or you can frame it as to not allow outside testing at the water and wastewater lab facilities by any other entities aside from municipally owned and operated plants. So it's really just about how you want to
Let's start by doing this. Would Mr. Gearba and Ms. Rice retract their original motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gearba, or anybody from the dais, you're free to accept the language that City Manager O'Toole has suggested, or I don't see anything particularly problematic with postponing action until a date certain of July 1.
I want to postpone to July 1.
Okay, postpone this issue, so it'll appear as an unfinished business item then at our July 1 agenda. Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second that one.
Seconded by Harmount, okay? Is there any additional discussion? Go ahead.
So my question, when you were mentioning City Manager O'Toole, is do we then allow external third parties into our lab to perform tests? I think what Mr. Briggs was saying is that we perform tests on behalf of other municipalities. But I may have misunderstood
Yes,
that.
okay, yes, we do,
That's why I
yes.
clarify.
So,
back.
yes.
So, yes. So I just want to make sure, because that was the part that I think I was getting stuck on, was having other people come in.
Yes, and that's what we'd be talking about prohibiting, no third-party groups. Oops, sorry.
I have another one.
Go ahead.
We
We got to
allow-
try to keep the discussion, though, on the motion, on the motion that's been put on the floor, which is just to postpone.
Well, this, though, just the plant, just the water plant?
Go ahead with your comments.
I just was going to say that we allow other agencies to come in here and perform breathalyzer tests on our equipment.
Yes, and
Other
in this case,
agencies.
we would continue to allow other agencies to request that work be performed on our equipment, tests be performed on our equipment. What we're trying, I think the consensus is to prohibit third parties, so people who operate independent businesses, from using our lab for testing.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
And employees.
Is there any additional discussion on the motion on the floor, which is moved by Gearboss, seconded by Harmount, to postpone to a date certain of July 1, 2024? All those in favor of the motion to postpone, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously, and we'll revisit this issue as an enumerated action item under the unfinished business portion of our next council meeting in 2 weeks. Subsequent motion under new business is 2497, local road resurfacing contract change order number 1. This will be a motion to authorize or not authorize staff to approve the change order not to exceed $500,000 and to add pavement patching throughout the city and resurfacing work on Lexington Drive, Lexington Court, and Foxborough Court.
Move to authorize.
Moved by Seal to authorize. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Assistant City Engineer. Good evening.
With your permission, Mayor, I'd like to step in for engineer.
Absolutely, we would welcome that.
Thank you, sir.
Is this your inaugural presentation before
This
City
is,
Council? Well,
yes.
congratulations.
Yep. Okay, so as discussed at the May 20th council meeting, favorable bid prices for the 2024-25 local road resurfacing project have allowed us to expand the area included in this year's scope of work. We are proposing to add Lexington Drive, Lexington Court, and Foxborough Court, as well as full lane patches in response to complaints to the scope of work for the 2024 construction season. The attached road repair map is a screenshot from our GIS database that staff utilized to plan the additional road work for the upcoming construction season. Also attached is an estimate using as-bid prices for adding Lexington Drive, Lexington Court, and Foxborough Court, and a map of the areas scheduled for mill and fill this summer. We anticipate the patches will be about $75,000 to $100,000 in work. A not-to-exceed amount of $500,000 for upcoming change order number 1 is recommended to incorporate these changes. We want to maximize our dollars within the given fiscal year, which is why we have a not-to-exceed amount. There are still some moving pieces with the final schedule, so we ask that people refer to the ClearGov website for details. And to summarize, the economic impact is $500,000 from local road funds, and we do not need a budget amendment for this work.
Very good. I will be voting in favor of the motion, and I've already been in touch with some residents of Colony Estates, and technically speaking, Foxborough is part of Northview. I was just actually informed of that last week, who are very excited about this forthcoming work because those roads have had some minor repairs done over the past 3 decades, but nothing as significant or substantive as this. So very positive for those residential property owners in Colony Estates and Northview Sub. Excellent presentation, very, very thorough and straight to the point. Are there questions for the Assistant City Engineer regarding this motion? No? Easy enough? Any discussion on the motion? Well, thank you very much.
I just want
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you again to the engineering department for continuing to revise these things and take a look at them. And when we've got some extra money because bids are coming in less than we thought they were, really looking out to the community and trying to figure out, the best ways to serve the community. So I commend y'all for doing that. So thanks.
Thank you.
Amen.
Very good. We have a motion on the floor moved by CO, seconded by Rice to authorize. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 24-119, GIS Professional Services Renewal. This will be a motion to approve the renewal of GIS support services through OHM for FY25.
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Gearbock to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by CO. Was it Gearbock who?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
The reason it came off is when we were talking earlier in our work session about GIS, and perhaps, Tasha, if you could address, there are a number of items in this contract, and quite a few of what we hope this position is going to accomplish. Are they going to accomplish? Are there deadlines on all of those items, or is it our wish list if they get to those items? It seems like it's a big amount of things to accomplish.
Are you talking about specifically the scope in the proposal or the scope in our strategic plan?
In the proposal, because it lists a number of items in there, especially like cemetery and sidewalk replacement program and all of those items, and which are priority and which are not. And I'm just trying to understand, when I see that, looks great. It looks like it's a full-time position and more. That's why I'm wondering. But how are we getting them to make sure that they accomplish all those in the next year?
So I think of those, of what's outlined in the GIS attached proposal, the highest priority for us is nailing down and getting the spatial and appropriate layout for our essential infrastructure. So for instance, on our water main, we have GPS most of our valves, so we know where they're at in our system, but we don't have the date of all of our water main properly populated in our GIS system. The date is very important for us to manage when we're managing our system, the date that it was installed. And what we have done in the engineering department over the last 2 summers is digitized all of our as-built records, which were on a wall downstairs in the plan room here. Something that used to take me literally an entire day to look for now couldn't take me as little as 30 seconds because we have these digitized and linked into GIS now. So that is one of the time-consuming efforts associated with this is going through, pulling out the as-built records and actually putting the valve in the proper, because if there's a T, what side of the T, or if there's a cross, is that valve on? And that's an important part of us operating the system. And quite frankly, right now, not all of our valves are on the right side of the T, and we're working to get those properly placed. Even though they're placed in a GPS point in space, how the water main is drawn between those needs some revisions in some areas. So that's the big, I think what you're pointing out specifically are some of the field maps that we have asked OHM to help us with, and those are smaller efforts. Well, I guess it depends on what it is, but the sidewalk program, for instance, is something that is forthcoming, that DPW Director Searles wants to utilize GIS to help optimize our program, spend our dollars actually out there fixing the sidewalk, not on engineering to design to fix the sidewalk. Right. And by getting all of the data in GIS, we can move forward with that. So we are constantly working with the team with GIS. In fact, we have bi-weekly meetings with them, and in using that to plan the work, and we as staff are trying to stay in compliance with our strategic plan when driving that work or managing that work.
Okay, when I've looked at that, I just want to make sure that prioritize. It just seems like there's so much on that report that 1 year won't accomplish all that. And I know we've always talked about this proceeding.
Right.
Is that these are things we'd like to get to within this, but I mean, how do you manage if you've listed it all in that proposal and they only get the top 2 done and they spend $100,000 on it? Is that are we really getting our bang for our buck?
Yeah, yes. So, and I agree, GIS is an ongoing effort. It needs constant, did you want something to add? Okay.
Yeah, if I could
Please,
add.
go ahead.
Dean, some of those are actually just dashboards. Yeah. Like the sidewalk one is a dashboard. The amount of work and time that's going to go into that is very minimal, and that is a one and done. What Tasha's talking about is some of the elements of GIS is kind of ongoing, but as we get it more defined and detailed, it shrinks up the amount of heavy lift. But like when we look at our main break and our citizen complaint dashboards, those were all built in a year, less than a year. So some of those specific ones, so it's not going to be, oh, we didn't get to this, didn't get this. Some of those are just going to be ready goes.
Okay, so from a year from now, though, when we get a final billing for it, they should be able to identify if these are all the projects completed?
Yeah, we could define that.
Match up to what we proposed in that proposal?
Yeah, yes.
I just want to double check on it. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the dais? No? Okay, it's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to approve the renewal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-126, TMF grant application. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from DPW Director Searles and to approve or not to approve the proposal from OHM for TMF grant administration in an amount not to exceed $93,000.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Lesh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by CO. Director Searles, would you care to come to the podium for some brief comments for council's benefit as well as the public's?
If you want me to start, we were awarded a $600,000 grant from the state to do lead service verification. We found out kind of last minute that we actually had a decreased timeline to get this information to the state. It moved from, I believe, January, then backed up to October 1st. We have this amount approved at $93,000, and a portion of this is public education. So some of this stuff we might be able to do the lifting in-house and not have to spend, but the managing of the data has to be, managing of the grant and getting the data reported back to the state. That's the bulk of this ask.
And again, for the public's benefit, this program is not unique to Saline. It applies to every municipality.
Yes, every municipality, and I actually didn't know this, across the country is now on the same timeline to hit their verification marks. What we are going to be utilizing this grant for is to check each side of the stop box for the service line material. We were, with our meter program, we got a little bit ahead and we're able to get the inside service line material, so we're we were able to just focus right in one spot and probably hit more than we would have, maximize the dollars a little bit more. And then we do have a GIS dashboard to log that data as well and report it to the state.
Very good. Are there questions for the DPW Director? Mr. Gearbaugh?
When we go to accomplish this work, who's going to be doing all the digging?
Contractor.
Okay, so we're going to third-party it out. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Director Searles, thank you. Any subsequent discussion on the motion? It's been properly moved by Lesh, seconded by CO to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Last action item under new business is 24-127. This is FY24 CWSRF bond resolution. This will be a motion to adopt resolution number 24-127.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Moved by Gearboss simply to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. I believe this was Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. You had removed this item?
I had, thank you very much. Just basically, it's $8 million, and I just felt like it was worthy of not being on the consent agenda. And I had an opportunity to speak with the treasurer earlier today, and I think she's gone for the day. So, City Manager O'Toole, I might put you on the spot. Just to understand, I want people to understand that we're not looking for an additional $8 million. We're not in a shortfall situation on the wastewater or overruns. So if you could just sort of explain, because that was my red flag on it.
So if you all recall, when we first approved the construction work or awarded the bid for construction services on the wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project, it was in excess of the maximum we were allowed to take for FY23 SRF funds, which was $65 million. We knew all along that we would have to go for FY24 SRF. The original amount that we applied for was actually considerably larger because we thought we would have to do more work associated with the West Belt project as well. And since that time, we've also learned that we received federal assistance, direct assistance through a federal appropriation. So that number has actually decreased since the last time that we talked about it and is now in line with the expectations we have for the existing contract. It's not for new work. This is all work that has already been conceived of and discussed. It is work that is already described in a contract or was an alternate to that contract already, and it is work that our financial advisors have already factored into our rate study. So this is not going to trigger any change in our trajectory for rate increases in the future. All it is kind of filling the gap that we knew already existed.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I just wanted the public to understand that.
Any additional questions or comments, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just for me, as earlier I mentioned, there's that mistake in there where it says not to exceed, and that's on page.
And we did find that and correct it.
The one thing with this document, it mentions a number of debt servicings from as far back as 2015, 2018, and then 2023. And then March 4, 2024 is also. How does the 8 million relate to that 15 million that was issued in March? I'm looking at the first page. You know, it talks about not to exceed $8 million, and this is whereas pursuant adopted resolution for the improvements not to exceed $15 million. There's a lot of not to exceeds in here, and I'm trying to figure out what's the total dollar amount and where are we at this point?
Certainly. So the not to exceed is still, was our original 15 million. That's what we were working off of. I can get you all, if you'd like, an exact number.
I think it'd be helpful at this point in time to understand, because when you look at this document, it just continue mentioning everything. And then also just a clarification and, assurance how our debt servicing is going to be achieved to meet all these payments. And I think that's something that probably our treasurer has handy.
Yes, and you'll all see it as part of our updated rate study. So the new rate study that we share, that'll likely come out in October, November, we'll talk about it for it to take effect in January. We'll show all of that, the new debt servicing that includes this issuance.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any additional questions, Councilmember Rice?
One quick comment, since this is a public document, if someone could get into the properties of it and change the property title. It currently says Village of Eau Claire.
Yeah, I updated it.
Okay, thank you.
Change will be made without objection. Sorry about that. Okay. We have a motion on the floor simply to acknowledge receipt that was moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to adopt the resolution?
Move to adopt.
Moved by Gearbaugh to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded again by Dillon. Is there any additional discussion? There is none. All those in favor of adopting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is commission, committee, and other reports and announcements from council members. Again, I'll start to my left and end to my right. Councilmember Lesh, any board commission updates or other reports or announcements?
Jazz in the Park still is a little bit under money, so, if anybody wants to, especially businesses around Saline, to contribute to the Jazz in the Park, we would be greatly appreciative.
Very good. Mr. Seal?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Nothing at this time.
Two things, and I believe, Councilmember Rice, are you going to be referring to the Juneteenth resolution that was adopted at our last council meeting?
Yep.
Excellent. I think that's appropriate in your capacity as the liaison to our DEI committee. City Manager O'Toole, this is not, I guess, rhetorical, but I understand that you will not be able to answer or require some feedback or require you to follow up with Community Development Director Harrington upon his return to the office, which I believe is early next week. I would be curious, I think the community and council would be curious as to a status of the former UAW hall at Woodland and Maple. They have an approved site plan that dates back several months, but I have not seen any construction activity on site. And there also appears to be some potential code violations with that property. Specific to debris, lawn has not been mowed, and there probably are some other issues as well. So it was a good site plan. I voted in favor of it. I think everybody on Planning Commission voted in favor of it. We're eager to see that project move forward, and I'm just curious as to a status update. So if somebody could report back next week, that would be greatly appreciated. Mr. Gearbaugh, reports or other announcements, commission committee updates?
Just kind of an update on the wastewater treatment task force, and perhaps our city manager can also chime in. We're looking to evaluate and to probably transition, as she had mentioned in her memo this last week, the group more towards like an asset management aspect that would be more like one of our subcommittees where a couple more members of council would probably serve on it, and to be able to evaluate a little bit more. We're realizing that, we can't just look at just the wastewater treatment plant. We have other assets, not only it's the distribution system and all of that. But just kind of an update on that. As you know, there's been a couple issues with the sand filters. They're addressing the rust in one of them and had to bring it down, and I guess evaluating it. And then the other one is we're able to finally get the soil hauled away from the wastewater treatment test site so that it can be disposed of and the project's moving forward again. So that's it for me.
Good. Councilmember Rice?
Yeah, thanks. So earlier this month, council approved a proclamation designating June 19th, Juneteenth here in the city of Saline. And I want to give a little background to the community about what Juneteenth is, and also talk about an event that is coming up on Wednesday. So on June 19th, 1865, the day the first of over 250,000 enslaved people in Texas learned that they were free. This was 2.5 years after President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Although slavery throughout the nation would not be formally abolished until the ratification of the 13th Amendment in December of that year, the newly freed black people of Texas celebrated June 19th as Freedom Day. Juneteenth is not just a celebration that honors people who were freed from demoralizing system of slavery. Juneteenth is a vital part of the American story that reminds us how the lessons of the history impel us to affirm the tenets of freedom, justice, and equality for all Americans. And with that, I invite all Salinians in the community and the community surrounding us to join the library on Wednesday. They're going to have an outdoor event, and it is going to entail author Brandon Freeman. He's the founder of Shades of the Outdoors. He will discuss how the outdoors was structured to exclude people of color, and he's going to present the illustration of engagement with the outdoors as a continuation of the march towards civil rights. There's going to be some refreshments and lawn games, and I believe he is also going to have a group. I can't remember which day it is. I believe it's on Saturday at Curtis Park, and take a walk through the park and have some discussion as well. So I encourage the entire community to join that. I think it'll be a very fruitful conversation with Mr. Freeman, and it is an important day for us to recognize that we have folks in our community and in our surrounding community who are still affected by discrimination and disenfranchisement, primarily due to the color of their skin. With that, I would like to ask that council take a look at, along with the city manager, perhaps next year, following in the federal guidelines of this being a federal holiday. President Biden declared that this is a federal holiday, and I do know that the city has not yet created a holiday for its employees, and I think that that is very important. Hopefully next year we can add that to our proclamation and allow our staff to also take time to reflect on Juneteenth in 2025. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Harmount, any reports or commission committee updates?
We had a Historic District Commission meeting last Thursday. I was not able to attend, so maybe I would defer to Councilperson Gerba on that one. I do want to say on Wednesday, we have an Environmental Commission meeting coming up, and invite the public to attend. And also we have an additional position open on the Environmental Commission looking to fill.
Very good. Mr. Gerba, do you want to mention anything on the recent Historic District Commission meeting?
Actually, we just had one approval that was minor. Home is replacing a back porch, and we fortunately didn't have enough votes for it. It could be handled administratively, and it was dealt with at that point. I did forget to mention that we're going to have two events coming up at the farm, one at the farm and one at the depot. July 6th will be our celebration of the 4th of July from 11 to 3 at the Saline Depot, so we encourage you to come out. We're just going to do a real recognition in the community and recognize the Independence Day. And then there's going to be a event this Saturday. Hopefully it'll cool down a little bit. The library is sponsoring it, and it's a book read. And if I can get the date here real quick, we're hoping to have individuals come out, and they're going to be sitting around, and they're going to have a read for the younger children that are in our community. And it is called, give me a second.
Unfortunately, the weather reprieve is until Sunday.
Yeah, I saw that, and I thought that's going to be a thing, but I apologize. It's, here it is. It's going to be called Summer Storytime at Rentschler Farm at 10:30 a.m. And it's for ages 0 through 7. And we request, if you want to come along, bring a chair or a blanket, and it's free and no registration required.
Very good. Transitioning to our final discussion item, I believe it was at the request of Councilmember Rice that Saline Main Street got added as a discussion item. Is that correct?
Yeah, primarily I want to talk about any updates to our social district, where we are with things, what we've found out in our research here at the city through legal, through personal research. So if we could start with the city manager and an update for us on any thing that legal has provided in extending the district to the North Ann Arbor Street area.
Unfortunately, at this time, I don't have any formal recommendation yet. I had some preliminary work by legal counsel that continued to reiterate what staff's original understanding was, and there have been some follow-up questions related to that, which are now still sitting with legal counsel. I will note both myself and legal counsel have noted that depending on who you speak to at Eagle, the response may be slightly different. So this, again, kind of falls to a matter of us understanding the intent of the legislator and the existing language of the statutes that allow for the creation of the social district.
I think you meant Liquor Control Commission, not Eagle.
Sorry, yeah, I deal with them so much. Liquor control isn't my go-to.
Verbal tick.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess my question is, what's stopping us from doing this aside for an opinion? Because I've done some research, we had some research provided to us by Saline Main Street, where, you know, Chelsea includes a highway, Howell includes a highway, and then I guess the secondary answer is, so I read an opinion that said we can't cross Michigan Avenue, but then the secondary question, which you've just explained wasn't answered yet, was whether or not Dan's having more than one license constituted multiple establishments north. So what are we fighting here? Are we fighting Michigan Avenue? Are we fighting the multiple licenses?
The biggest issue is Michigan Avenue. So the state statute is very clear, and this is what we've heard, whoever we talk to, you cannot have an open container on a state highway. You simply cannot. Now, some jurisdictions and potentially some folks over at the Liquor Control Commission see you as being able to still include that in the district, but it can't be part of a commons area, meaning you can't consume across it. But the definition of the commons area is very clear that you have to have two contiguous businesses within the commons area to establish it. So our attorney's opinion on that has been that there's no way for a district to be contiguous that crosses Michigan Avenue unless there are two license holders on the north side of Michigan Ave.
And that's the answer that we're trying to get, that's the question we're trying to get answered, is whether or not Dan's Tavern holding multiple licenses is good enough to meet the
Correct.
criteria?
That is the open question as I still see it.
Okay, and then secondary to that, they have said, so even if we establish a district, a secondary district above North Ann Arbor Street to include Dan's and his multiple licenses, you cannot take something from Dan's, cross the street, and go to the common area.
Yes, that has been legal's understanding. That is my understanding.
I'm hesitant in my acceptance of that simply because other cities are doing it. Like Chelsea, for instance, points out where you cross the street. They say, you know, consume it in this location and this location, but here are the dotted line pathways that and they have like two cross streets that they want people to cross to get to the next common area or whatever we're calling it. And then Howell just flat out includes Grand Avenue on theirs, which is a highway route as well. So I don't know. I feel like we've dug deeper than we needed to. I looked through, 60 different social districts this week, and I realize that a lot of them are different because they have different little areas and things like that, but I just feel like we've like turned a gray area into a black and white area, and I'm really disappointed that we can't figure out a way to say yes to this, and I really would like to encourage us to continue to come up with a way.
So ultimately, the establishment of the district is wholly the responsibility of the city. All liability for what occurs within it is on the city. I will say the council has legal opinion, they have staff opinion on the interpretation of the legislation. If other communities have chosen to interpret it differently, or if other councils have assumed greater liability than we at this time so far have been willing to assume, that is certainly their discretion, and it is certainly your all discretion if you'd like to take on more liability. I will just say frankly, at this point, I do not see it coming with the recommendation of public safety staff.
Do you think you'll have any additional clarification from the Liquor Control Commission or legal by the time we reconvene on July 1?
I'm actively, I was hoping to have an update from legal by today. So yes, I would hope by the July 1 meeting. I don't expect to get any more clarity from the Liquor Control Commission. As I said, every communication has been slightly different in terms of the interpretation.
Sorry to cut you off, Councilmember Rice.
No, it's okay. I think my one final thing is that I just want to say out loud that what the statute reads in 436.1915 of the Michigan Liquor Control Act, Section 9151 says alcohol liquor shall not be consumed on the public highways. That's where the interpretation comes from. And I think if we can get legal's advice on whether or not Dan's 2 liquor licenses constitute 2 establishments, he has 2 different buildings, he can close the door between the 2 of them. If that can be incorporated, if they say, yes, Dan has 2 licenses, that counts, I will go to battle on that saying shall not be consumed on public highways, and that it can cross the street.
I would defer you to the definition for a commons area, which is the area in which consumption occurs. And the commons area is the issue. No one's debating that you can consume or not consume on a highway. You cannot consume on a highway. What the statute states is that you have to have a commons area that is contiguous with 2 license holders. Legal's position is that you lose contiguousness by having the state highway, because you cannot have a state highway that is a commons area.
Yeah, I don't agree with legal, because I don't think other cities have agreed. Have we asked other cities' legal departments how they got through it?
I mean, that would be highly unorthodox for us to reach out to someone else's legal counsel for an opinion outside of our own.
It would be legal reaching out to legal.
Yeah, I mean, I could ask our legal to ask for other opinions, but we wouldn't.
I would like our legal to ask for other opinions. I would like to know how other cities have done it. I feel like the city of Saline, it is 2024, this has been around since 2020. We're already late in doing this, and now we're finding this black and white area that other cities seem to have bypassed somehow.
Again, council has discretion if they want to take the advice of staff and legal counsel or not. I'm just providing you all with what information has been provided to me.
And I think Lara's passed the buck on this. It's the whole thing.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
the ones that have definitely passed the buck, because they basically turn
Totally.
around and say, it's up to the community, but
Yep.
yet when they come to enforce it, they may nail us on that issue. So being the typical state agency, they don't want to take responsibility for what they're supposed to take responsibility.
I don't fear the enforcement. I don't think they are enforcing it.
That's
I think that's the problem.
They're not enforcing it, and I think
That's
we
what
have
I'm saying.
situations.
Well, let's leave this as a discussion item for the July 1st meeting, in the hope that we receive some additional feedback, either from a state regulatory agency or, more importantly, from legal. And then to City Manager O'Toole's point, if somebody at that occasion would like to offer an appropriately worded motion from the floor, it can be considered, debated, and voted upon. Okay?
That sounds good.
Is there anything else pertaining to Saline Main Street? No?
No, that was
Okay, all right. If there's no further discussion items, then we come to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? City Clerk Royal, did we receive any written comments in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? Yes, sir. Okay, please.
Good evening. Excuse me. Do I have to push button?
Nope, you're fine. Please continue.
Well, I want to be brief. There are 2 important things I'd like to share with you. Before that, I just really want to express my sincere thanks and appreciation for your leadership. I made quite a few public comments, and I haven't got the echo what you guys think about. But in general, it just aligned with your purpose with make Saline the better place, even better place to live, and also to solve the lot of problems we have, environmental, social, and public safety. And there are 2 important things. I think the new wave is coming very strong in a healthy way from top down, top to every areas. And Governor Whitmer have the new initiatives. Just recently, number 1, it is, I would say, is Rebuild Michigan. There are 3 that is from the Magna Policy Conference. You guys probably know it is very important. I want to summarize it in 3 points. Number one is the governor wants to rebuild Michigan by follow the momentum of MHCP. And this time is new tone. The 3 points. Number one is entrepreneurship by pitch. You know, certainly on the elevator pitch and the new entrepreneur forum started in this area. Now it is 100,000 award for pitch new ideas and entrepreneurs to make Michigan a leader in this nation, manufacturing. And also the second point is assigned is the Chief Environmental Innovative Officer, Ben, 39 years old, new inventor, have some whatever it is, airplane. Thirdly is to encourage the entrepreneurs, facilitate all kinds of things. So there's 3 important things, very important. Another meeting, which is just recently I know about that, it is also related with entrepreneur and focus on manufacturing, especially 3D printing, called a Diamond Initiative, McCall, Wayne State, and the area which is focused on there, and then give the entrepreneur the chance to manufacture in the advanced manufacturers 3D printing. I think that we should really lead. Saline should lead with your leadership. I think we should not miss the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Changming. Any additional citizen comments? Okay, then before we adjourn, it was just brought to my attention that one of our colleagues is celebrating a birthday today. Councilmember Harmont, we wish you a very happy birthday and good health and happiness in the year ahead. Thank you for your service. If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:34.
So moved.
Moved by Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is